Greetings from Vancouver. I'm happy to be among you in Toronto, even if in virtual reality. And I want to thank Geurnica Editions for producing my books. One collection of short stories earlier was called Lucia's Eyes and Other Stories. And today I'm presenting the second collection of short stories called Expulsion. So the first two stories in this new collection, Expulsion, are face and hand, and they're not really about body parts. Face is set in Vancouver and attempts to describe in realistic terms the reality that became quite surreal, mythical in a way, and uses myth as a device. But the second part of the collection brings us to Russia. When I began my work on the stories from this collection, which was about 5 years ago, Russia was not much in the news, which I suppose is good news in itself. But Putin's Russia is quickly turning into dictatorship and really, frankly, a new nightmare. When I came to Canada, and I came as a refugee with two then small sons, some of my friends back home considered me sort of a traitor to the principles of goodness, and they thought one had to endure and not to leave the country. And now even these staunch and principled people said to me on my last visit that they would leave Russia now if they could. I think it was Diderot, the French philosopher, who said that the purpose and the task of art is to find extraordinary in the ordinary and to find ordinary in the extraordinary. As a writer, I'm more fond of the first part of the formulation. What really draws my attention is seemingly mundane, the little motes floating in the light. And aesthetically, artistically, I also find it as a more difficult task for a writer. So my book is not filled with dissidents and heroes, but rather ordinary people like you and I, full of frailties and desires, and they don't know how to go about them. They can betray and be remorseful, they can be uncertain, they want to live by their principles, but it's hard to do. I take my students to a field trip to Russia every second year or so. And the last time when we went, and these are mature students, they're not undergraduates. The last time when we went, there was a new touristy attraction offered, which was a tour of communal apartments. Communal apartments, I have to explain a little bit to give you a context of what it is. After the revolution, people were, the term was used, jammed or crammed. So the ordinary apartment building with vast flats or apartments, more people were crammed into the same space. So it came to be like 40 families would live in the space where before the revolution 2 or 3 families could live. And this is the background for one of the stories in the collection, which is called A Room Between the Two Goggles. So the story is set within the communal apartment, and I'm just going to read you a little bit from the text. Communal apartments, that shrewd contrivance of the Russian Revolution, have been so brilliantly and exhaustingly described by so many gifted writers that you'd think Lenin and his confederates had brought them into existence just for the sake of Russian literature. Your ordinary garden variety writer would have had to twist the plot's arm to arrange encounters among characters whose paths wouldn't have had the slightest chance of crossing in normal circumstances. But not your Soviet writer. He didn't have to pull any such fantasy from his magician's hat. Life, dancing to its Leninist choreography, had brought all the characters together for him on a single miniature stage, 4 square meters per person, and ready, set, go, raise the curtain. In the blue haze of the communal kitchen, violinists, construction workers, accountants, doctors, petty thieves and KGB informers were brought together, quickly producing in the chafing of unshaved cheek and jowl tumult of savage accusation and squabbling against a shabby background of zinc wash basins, boiling bed sheets and seething kettles of borscht. The sole bulb hanging from a braided cord in the hallway throws pale shadows on the wafern of scheming. The infernal poison of intrigue and blackmail seeps into the tiny rooms, each one further subdivided with cupboard, a nook for Granny, a cranny for her daughter, a third slightly larger space for her son, his wife, and their infant. The attic cavity is crammed with communal junk, dusty, yellowed stacks of newspaper, a jumbled heap of broken chairs, a rusty tricycle with a missing wheel. For nothing may be thrown away in the land of dialectical materialism that had almost managed to eliminate everything material. I'm going to introduce another story now called If a Tree Falls in a Solitary Forest. The plot is very simple. A little girl is looking for a father, and she approaches different strangers on the intersection with the same question, "Would you like to be my father?" And so she does find a man who agrees to visit her and her mother, who is a young woman. He spends the night with her mother and then he leaves. But Dasha thinks that he will return, and so she comes back to the same intersection and she keeps waiting for the man. She stood in the same place at the very edge of the sidewalk, holding into a dusty street lamp with her arm, lest the crowd, sullenly rolling away toward the opposite shore with a green light, sweep her into the roadway. When an outflux began, she, like a pebble forgotten by the wave, waited often like on the shore, now bereft of people, until the signal blinked its command for a new influx. She looked avidly then at the mournful, preoccupied faces rolling toward her in compact ranks, women weighed down with string bags and purses and wearing out-of-season knitted hats and worn coats, men with briefcases who were more often lightly dressed and empty-handed, a fat man with a garland of toilet paper rolls around his neck, awkwardly waddling like a penguin with his belly stuck out. It was funny, and Dasha burst out laughing. But the one person she needed, their father, so far wasn't among them. And even so, she believed that he would finally come, live, his jacket fluttering as he moved, a ball in his hand, a carelessly tied yellow scarf around his neck. He would come. He would definitely come. It was only for the time being that he was unseen, was hidden from her eyes, the way rivers are hidden beneath the ice in winter, or birds in a forest thicket, or any lost thing. But she would wait, for everything that is unseen remembers us and expects to meet us again and resume its life. And only if we devour or forget, only then will people and everything on the earth cease to exist. Well, thank you very much for your time and for your patience.